to A Well-Designed Business. My name is Luann Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of A Well-Designed Business. It's Power Talk Friday. And today's Power Talk Friday is a fun one for me because I have Jamie Lieberman with me. And Jamie is a Jersey girl. So that's like the first layer of fun. She speaks my language, okay? And the other fun part of it is that Jamie and I have not only in common that we have done business together, but we have friends together in common. So Jamie is an attorney, a podcaster, an entrepreneur, and she is dedicated to making the legal field accessible to you. And she is just passionate about sharing the message that legal doesn't have to be scary. Okay. Jamie is the owner and founder of #Legal. And you need to start following her on Instagram and you will understand immediately why Jamie is and how Jamie is making legal things not scary. She's extremely down to earth, extremely accessible, feels like your girlfriend before you've even met her. And the really cool thing is that Jamie draws on her experience working with influencer marketing professionals, creatives, business owners, interior designers just like you, help you grow as you grow your business and protect your business and help you understand the places in your business that you need that protection and that you have things with your eyes wide open and that your contracts and your agreements are all clear. Jamie leads an all-female virtual team. Okay, which is pretty interesting. And she focuses on providing clients with advice on all types of subjects, such as intellectual property, contracts, privacy, FTC, and general business law, as well as negotiation strategies, talking my love language right there. She's also an outstanding speaker, tons of energy, and she is the co-host of the podcast Fearless Business Podcast. So I want to share with you before I bring Jamie here on the air with me is that I did an episode number 171 with Danielle Liss. Jamie and Danielle at the time were partners in #Legal. And so I had come across Danielle and we met and we did the interview. So you get a little bit of what's interesting is, and we're going to talk about it today, that Danielle and Jamie are no longer partners. And so I think this is a good conversation because there's insights here. I know many of you have had partnerships that you're looking to dissolve. And these two women have done it in such an amazing way and such a good way for each of them as persons, as individual human beings, but also for their business. But if you listen to that episode, you'll get some background on their firm because the core beliefs of their firm and the way they run their firm are still very similar to the way Jamie has taken the firm into the future. The other thing I want to share with you is that Jamie is good friends with Jenny Madden that we all know and love. Jenny Madden Interiors in Hoboken. And you remember Jenny Madden from episode number 332. So today, Jamie is with us and we're going to pull apart some of these crazy topics in the legal field that sometimes stress us as creatives. So Jamie, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So the thing is, you ladies have done work for me and we're going to talk about a lot of things today, but one of the things that I love most about your firm, #Legal, Jamie, is, there's two things that I love about it. I love that you truly get the intricacies of this creative field and this creative business, because you've done work for me in connected to my podcasting business. You did the contract for me for a big sponsor that I was onboarding, and you also did the contract for me for my co-authored book, A Well-Designed Business, the Power Talk Friday Experts. And I think about my lawyer that has been our lawyer for the 33 years that I married. And I love him. He's a great guy, and he does all of our real estate deals, and he does all of our wills and all of that stuff. But I just the thought of having these conversations with him, I just thought we're going to have about 20 hours in legal hours racked up before we get to clarity on what I need. And so this leads me to the second thing that I love about your business model is that I can come to you for a one-off project. I don't have to be on you don't have to be on my retainer. You don't have to be my lawyer for everything. But when I came to you with these one-off projects 2 separate times, it was literally a 10-minute conversation, and I get back an email draft that says, these are all the things, Luann, I think that you're looking for in this contract. And by the way, here's all the 4 or 5 points that you didn't even know you needed. What do you think about them? And that was just so awesome for me, Jamie. And I have to, high five you on that work.
I feel like we should just end the podcast right now. There's nothing more I could say. Thank you so much. We do pride ourselves and try very hard to make it as easy and painless as possible, because there really doesn't need to be like 100 phone calls. If your lawyer gets your business, they should be able to help you out.
Yes. And the thing is, what's cool is that he does get our business when we're doing these other things, right? I'm sure you're capable of doing those things as well. But I love that. It's funny because our other friend, Amanda Berlin, right? And she is a PR expert. And Amanda was on episode number 420. And Amanda has a similar model for PR. You don't have to do the 6-month, the 1-year retainer, which has its value. It has its value. There's no question. If you're looking to if you're an interior designer and you're like, that's it, line in the sand, I am going to create a platform and it's a full, frontal attack with multiple strategies. You've got Andrew Joseph, you've got Inc. PR, and even Amanda is qualified and certainly capable of doing that. But there's times, and Amanda explained to us, there's times when you have an opportunity to be in a show house and you just want to make the most of it. You don't have the budget for a full year of PR. And so when I run across firms like yours and Amanda's, where you have such a specific skill set, that's a professional level skill set that we understand, and I understand that I want to pay somebody to do, but I might not be in the need or the position of having it every week, every month. And you just make it easy to access your talents. And I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, I do enjoy that part, because I feel like it's a really fun surprise when a client that I've worked with maybe 6 months or a year ago pops up in my inbox. It feels good. And a lot of times when they pop back in, it's because something exciting is happening.
Right.
A big deal is going on. Someone got a book deal. I just had a client I worked with a year ago come in and say she was getting a reality TV show deal.
Wow.
I mean, how cool is that?
Yes.
And she's like, can you look at that contract? I said, yeah, of course. Like that kind of thing is great. I mean, look, I do have clients who have us on retainer, and those are great too. But I'm happy that I can provide something flexible for people who need that.
Exactly.
It's important. Not every business needs a lawyer on retainer.
Right. And of course, as you said, you're a regular grown-up legal firm that has full-on cases that go on for years and months, and you battle, for your client. I mean, yes. That's not part of your services, So the thing is, you actually have. What I love too is, when I met Peter Lang, the designer CPA, I love when somebody specializes in our industry, because it means that there is this tremendous ability to get right to the core of the conversation. So in the case of Peter Lang, he actually only services interior designers. And so when the interior design business model is so different than, your typical brick and mortar or so many businesses, it's completely different. And so he comes to the table understanding the way the finance structure is set up. And that's for you as well. You don't necessarily only take interior designers, but you have many interior designers that are your clients and you've worked with. And so you have this expertise in these areas of opening up your firm from the ground opening. What kind of entity should it be, right? And then you talk about partnership structure, and you talk about client contracts, and you're able to do vendor contracts. And, even if a designer is reaching for and searching for and has an opportunity for a licensing, these are things that you're skilled at, right? So talk to us a little bit about what you've learned with working with interior designers, Jamie, and some of the nuances that you understand that are particular challenges to our business models. Anything come to mind in particular?
Yeah, the client contract is really the key. It really is. There are so many, and it really depends. Like you and I had spoken about this before. It really depends on what aspect of the business you even work in. People can be so specialized. And so I find that interior design contracts are some of the most complicated contracts when done correctly.
Yeah.
And they are. And so simple contracts can really, a lot of people come and say, I just want something simple.
Yeah.
And I know you do. I do too. But that's not going to protect you the best. So it's really important. One of the things the pitfalls that I definitely find is, and when you're managing other people that are outside of the business, right? You have third-party providers. How do you handle that? And the advice that I give to my clients frequently is, don't be in the middle of it. And so it's important to have those clauses that are set forth where, however you manage those third-party providers, whether they're electricians or contractors or whatever the case may be, that's a really specific thing to this business. And it's important to know how you want to be in the middle of it. And if you are in the middle of it, to understand the potential liability for it and how you protect yourself as best as you possibly can. So that's one of the areas. Another area, which doesn't always happen, but sometimes does happen, is if you come into an area where it's not safe, or you walk in and something needs a lot more work than you expected, being able to step out of that without violating your contract. Because I've had a couple clients come to me saying, I went in there and I realized the place was in much worse shape than I expected. And there were some safety issues. So putting in a clause in your agreement that makes sure that if you deem it unsafe, that you're able to make sure that your client knows they need to get it fixed, whatever the issue is, before you come back. So those are two sort of specific areas in the client agreement. The other thing that we talked about is definitely in the partnership realm. If you are going into business with somebody else, it's really important that you have a partnership agreement. And a lot of people go into business with their friends, so they think they don't need one. Sometimes family members. I mean, I have been in the middle of mother and daughter fights, sister and sister, cousin, you name it. And so having a really good partnership agreement is really important before you enter into any kind of deal with somebody else.
So let's explore that a little bit, because I feel like that is it. It's a tough area, isn't it, Jamie? When you say, mother and daughter, sister and sister, cousin, there is this tendency to say, yeah, we're mom and daughter. We got this. No big deal, right? But it's always the hindsight lesson. So you sit from a place, right? You sit from a place where a mother and daughter have absolutely unraveled and been at two opposite sides of the legal table. And so do you find that I guess what it is, do you find that most people will come to you when they're starting to be the discord, and therefore they're reaching out, right? So it's like, it's too late then, right? Not too late, you can help, but it should be when everything's happy, right? Like, it's all happy. Let's do it the right way from happy, right?
That's exactly right. See, the issue that people forget is they think to themselves, we're mother, daughter, we're sister. You put money into play, even especially with families, everything changes. Everything changes with money. And so you just have to remember that your best friend, whoever the person is, or just somebody you just met and you have a good vibe about,
right,
every emotion is charged around money. When people think that they're being robbed of something that they're owed, or when someone thinks they're being taken advantage of, you stop being logical and become emotional. And as soon as you become emotional in a partnership issue, it's over. Right. You hold on to things you shouldn't hold on to. You don't have an ability to negotiate. And so, to what you're saying, start when you feel good, right. Because then you have a really good rapport. You can step back and say to yourself, what is actually fair? What does actually make sense? And what is good for both parties? Because it shouldn't be, I talk a lot about negotiation. This is a really hot button topic for me. I think it's something we don't think or talk about enough. But negotiation of any deal should be collaborative. We should be working together for a common goal.
Right.
We all have different interests, and making sure that those interests are met in some way. And sometimes you do have to give things up. But at the end of the day, the common goal is building a successful business. And if you go in knowing that not almost all partnerships break up at some point, you have to think to yourself, what do I want that to look like when it does? Who's going to own what? Is there intellectual property involved? There's so much, client lists, websites, all marketing materials, so much that people don't think about. And so if you think about that and you have a lawyer who can guide you through the many list of things that you'll need to think about, because it may be things you haven't even built yet. If you're just starting your business, that you can't even think you might have. Like when you started, did you think you'd have a very successful podcast? Like,
it was a wish, it was a hope, right? But you don't know, right?
You don't know. And now this is a huge asset of yours. Right. And so, it's things like that you have to be able to see 15 steps ahead, which, I was a litigator for many years before I started #legal. That's what my background is. And so I can see that very clearly because I used to break things apart instead of building them up. And so I know what people fight about. I know what goes to litigation. And so I'm able to step back and give a really neutral opinion saying, here's all the things you guys need to think about and talk about. Come back to me. Tell me how you guys have agreed. I'll draft the partnership agreement, and then your partner should go have an attorney review it, and we can get it done.
I love it. I mean, the thing is, it's funny because the analogy is what I'm a broken record on the podcast saying is that when you make your agreements with your client up front, whether, if your line in the sand is that you've got to agree to purchase $100,000 worth of product through me in the course of our project, or your line in the sand is simply, I will not communicate by text message, whatever it is, big or small, the point is always, if you express it to your potential client before they enter into the agreement with you, there's no emotion attached to it. It's simply, these are my rules, and you have the option to say yes or no to them, and I have the option to either revise or say, sorry, we don't have to work together. But if you wait until there's a problem and they only want to spend $10,000 on product and you're like, I'm sorry, we were doing 80, but it wasn't clear. And so it's the same thing when you go into business, whether it's a colleague or a family member. At that beginning part is the time. It's the unemotional time to make all the decisions and all those agreements, because now you're dreaming about the potential of what your company can become, right? You're saying, to your point, did you know what this podcast would be, right? So no, you have a vision, you have a dream for it, but what you're going to do is you're going to say to your client, okay, here you are, mother and daughter, you have a dream for what this is going to be. I'm going to tell you, in my experience, I've seen interior design firms that are going to do $5 million gross revenue a year. And, you are, how is that distribution? Do you always see yourselves as 50-50? Or mom, you're 30 years older, in 15 years, you're going to be 65. Are you going to work? Do you want a salary when you're not working? Like, do you want her to have a salary if she's not working? Like, what are we doing here? Right?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Because, the thing is, it's funny because I imagine there's probably a certain number of designers listening that just went, well, if she's not working, why would she get a salary? Right? Because if you're young enough and you don't get that. But I'm at the stage of WindowWorks where Yeah, you can be pretty darn sure whether I do 2 hours or I do 60, I'm going to get some money out of that business every week to the rest of time. I put 40 years building that son of a gun up for you to come behind me, yes, and run it and be there. And I value and I trust you and you're there, but I'm not going off to the sunset without some coins in my pocket. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And you might, at 25, if you're going in business with your mother who's 45 or 50, if she says that to you, you might be surprised, but you're more inclined to explore it. Whereas you're now 50 and she's 75 and you're going, why should I write you a check, lady?
Yes, that's exactly right. And that also goes to my point that businesses change.
Right.
So, and much like your client agreement, your partnership agreement is sort of like a living, breathing document.
Yes,
right?
it can be revised.
Change.
Yes.
It should.
Right.
Do a check-in with all your documents that you use, your independent contractor agreements, your employment agreements, your vendor agreements. Just look at them once a year and say, is this still working?
Right.
Has anything changed in my business?
Exactly.
Should I have another pair of eyes take a glance at this? And the answer may be, I'm doing great. Nothing's changed. We're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
But at least have it as like sort of that mental checklist
Mm-hmm.
where you think to yourself, like, let me just audit the things I'm doing. Like you audit your processes, right? We always think, how can we be more efficient?
Right.
I'm always thinking about that. I'm always saying to my director of ops, I'm like, how can we make this more
streamline
automated?
This? What are we going to do?
Oh my gosh. Send out all the questionnaires. And that's she's amazing at that. I'm grateful every day for my director of operations.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same thing. Like I think we make these documents, we stick them in a drawer, we never think about them again.
Right.
And then they come out, and especially in the beginning, sometimes we're doing things on a shoestring budget.
Right.
So maybe we threw something together because we're like, all right, I know I need something in writing. I don't want to pay for it right now, which is not something I recommend, but people do it, and it is what it is. Go back a year later when you've made a few dollars.
Yes.
Revise it. Think about it. Look at
because doesn't that, not only does there, what it is what you decide that you're going to, your division of responsibilities, let's call it that for lack of a better way to describe it, right? You have a vision for where and how that looks, but in whether it's 1 year or 5 or 10, that could change. And so therefore, maybe, the division of the assets, that the dissolution of it eventually in 30 years should change too, or whatever it is. It's like, the point is it doesn't stay the same the way and who you are. So your contract doesn't necessarily stay the same and the way it is either, is your point, right?
Yes, exactly. Businesses shift.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at the shift of just, I can look at my clients, and I can look at how me personally, I've been now in business 7 years, and I look at how different it was from 7 years ago. And I see this with clients who've been with me for a long time. I can look at the change in direction, or some people have one specialty and go another route, or some people decide, I don't want to do that work anymore. I'm done with that. I'm more interested in this.
Mm-hmm.
And so just make sure that, the documents that you're using accurately reflect that.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about, because this is a sticky subject with our industry, when you talked about your responsibility in managing third-party vendors, the plumbers, the electricians, the window treatment people, right? The thing is, I know there's different laws in different states, and I have heard many designers say, as a matter of fact, Corey Klassen, who is always one of my recurring guests on Design Biz Live with Judith Neary, he's from Canada, and he often will say, we can't even do that. Like I cannot do that work this way, the way you do it here. But I know from my experience in being a window treatment provider for people like Jenny Madden and Sandra Funk and all the others over the years, that they are presenting my contract to their client. I'm getting paid by the designer. And so that must infer or imply or actually mean they have liability for my work to their client. I mean, and I'm not talking about liability for me showing up on time and doing a good job. I'm talking about all the negative things that a vendor might do. So talk to us about that. Is that it's got to be legal, right? But is it not legal in all states, or is it the type of thing? Talk to us about that.
So it's not that it's not legal. And there's I'm speaking generally, right? I can't speak to,
state
there are
to
certain,
state, right?
Yeah, exactly. So generally speaking, and it depends also, like there's certain issues with general contractors, so I don't want to get into all of that.
Right.
But generally speaking, if it's allowed by law, and it typically is, in some cases it's not, you can, but you're putting yourself in a really risky spot by doing it. And I understand for a lot of designers are like, well, I want control over it. I don't want to be making my clients sign like 100 different contracts for all these different third-party providers. You just have to know the risk, because if you don't show up, if you break something, at the end of the day, the only person that, if you, the designer, are the only person that's contracting with the client, you have all the liability, because there's no contract between there may be no contract between, say, the client and the third party provider.
Right.
If there is a contract between the client and the third party provider, that's the way to be safest, is to just say, I'll facilitate the conversation. I'll be there. I'll help, but you need to sign the agreement separately, and you need to understand I'm not liable for the work.
Right.
And some people are scared to do that. I know that. I've been pushed back by many designers, and I understand that. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying just know with your eyes open what the potential liability is there.
So I would tell you that I would say 80% of the designers that we work with at Window Works work in that capacity, right?
I'm sure.
That's it. And so, and what's interesting is the more experience they get, and the more full service luxury design they deliver, the more likely that's to be the case. And it's
Agreed.
Right. And so it's usually the beginner, my baby designer, that is saying, okay, here's a window treatment quote, give her the money, and I'm over here and I'm just helping you pick the fabric and decide on the treatment. Right. And so, but it's interesting too, because, Sandra Funk, she's just always one step ahead. I've been working with her for many years, and just in the last month, we received a vendor contract. And so she's probably had some conversation with somebody like yourself, but she always is that one step ahead. And so, here is this big, agreement of all of the conditions. And I'm sure, even this is probably something that a good lawyer could bust up if a client wanted to, right? But at least there's an attempt there to say, you are, acting as my third party person, and these are the things that you will promise to me and you will sign off to me as, you know what I'm saying? And so she's putting parameters on us. And that's a great point. And I just want to take the moment to acknowledge that right here. A moment ago, we talked about how maybe family members are resistant to start a contract with each other in the beginning because maybe it feels icky. It's almost like a prenup. Like why are we doing that? We're assuming we're going to have a problem, right? But, here's Sandra and I. We have been doing business together for 10 plus years. There has never been one situation that was out of line in any way. That doesn't mean I've never made a mistake. It doesn't mean that she or her team has never made a mistake in our working together. It means that we've never had a problem with the mistake. It's always been, hey, I did this. I thought that. Okay, here's the solution. Let's get to it, right? But she still did not hesitate to send me a contract. And I didn't look at that like, are you kidding me? After all these years, you need me to sign a piece of paper? I just went, this is just one smart lady. Every time I turn around, she proves to me how smart she is. And that's the thing. When you all expect and want to do the right thing, the contract isn't a bad thing. It's a good thing, right, Jane?
Gosh, I say to people, and this is my philosophy, because a lot of objections I get about contracts are, I'm going to scare off my potential client, vendor, etc. I said, that is a gift. Yes. If you hand your contract to somebody and they say, we don't need a contract, I don't want to sign a contract, this is too complicated, I want you to
dodged a bullet.
Yes, I want you to hug them and say thank you, because you've just shown me that you are going to be the worst client I've ever worked with.
Or you are not going to stand, if you're the vendor, the third party, you're not really prepared to stand behind your word because you won't sign to it, right?
Exactly. And that is a good way for the high end, like what you're talking about, the more advanced, the larger firms. That's a really good way to do it. You should have an agreement. That way you're absorbing the liability with your client to make life easier for your client. But then if something does happen, you have an agreement with the vendor. And so the vendor will ultimately pay you for whatever issues that you have to pay out.
Right.
That is a great way to protect yourself. That is exactly what I would recommend if you are going to be in the middle of it and you are not going to have your client sign agreements directly with the third party vendors.
And I'll tell you, some of the things that she had in the contract, I mean, it was, a full blown lawyer contract. So
Sure.
it was like iTunes. I'm like, yes. Okay. Yes. But it's funny because there were 3 items in it that I was not in agreement on. And so first I want to share with some of the things that she did ask for, which I thought were terrific. And so as advice, and you'll add to other things that you think should be in it, but she wanted to know our insurances. She wanted to absolutely know the levels of liability that we carry, the levels, I don't know the names of the different things, whatever they are, what they are. Me.
Yeah.
But I mean, every time we do work in a building in New York City, we have to provide this proof. There's 2 different types of insurances that we have to provide. I don't know. It's not my end of the business. Adriana takes care of it. I see the emails going, blah, blah, blah. But she wanted to know our level of insurances. She wanted to know couple other technical things on that. We'll tell us. But there was 2 or 3 things that I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not signing a legal document to this. And one of the things was you will provide a specific start date for your services once we engage with you, and you will provide a specific completion date. And I'm like, no, I won't. I won't. You know what I mean? And so, because I'm thinking there's 20 ways on here that you could be the reason that I don't start something. You as the interior designer, your fabric didn't come on time, your check didn't get here, your client went on vacation and I couldn't take a final measurement, or on the install date, like the carpet guy got sick and he didn't show up, so I can't put my drapes in, right? So I emailed her back. I'm like, lady, love you like life. Happy to sign the contract. But there's 3 things in here that I just can't sign to. And I said, and because I know her so well, I said, is this like, okay, Lou, sign anyway, wink, wink. We know not these things. I said, because not feeling the love on signing a legal document that I know I'm not going to. And she said, no. That's actually more geared towards a contractor to the GC, this and that and everything. She goes, anything you don't like, cross out, put your initials. I'll look at it. We're good. You know what I mean? But I was like, look, sweetie, then I'm not signing this part.
I actually love that you said that, because I think a lot of people think they have to sign the agreement they're presented with. And you don't.
Right. Yeah, no.
And you shouldn't. You can negotiate contracts.
Yeah.
It is perfectly acceptable. So I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people do are just like what you said with iTunes. Fine.
Yeah.
No, read it. See what you're signing. Make sure it makes sense.
Yes. I'm sorry I didn't think to get the contract in front of me to see what the other couple of things were. They were minor like that. But they were just things where the only way I can sign this is I have to write this 19-page paragraph of all the ways you could prevent me from keeping to this start and end date. Like, do we want that part of the contract? You know what I'm saying? Original party agrees to this, and if not that, I'm like, this sounds like a little crazy to me.
Yes.
So what are some of the things? So I'm drawing a blank on some of the things that were in this agreement. Can you think off the top of your head? Because I'm sure there's designers listening going, oh, I should ask my plumber to sign a contract. What do I want in here? What are some of the things besides your insurance? We had to provide our resale, our license, our proof of, being an entity, la, la, la. What else was in there, Jamie? Can you imagine?
If you break something.
Yes, right. If you break something, Lou, you're going to fix it.
Yeah, bought it. If somebody on your staff gets injured, it's not our fault. That's probably a big one.
Right.
That's definitely at issue. Sometimes they'll put in there, like, you can't fight with the client. I don't mean you can't fight with the client, but like all the interactions between.
You're right. That was part of it. Right.
Yeah. All the interactions between client and myself will go through me. You can't steal the client I'm using very, very general
Right.
language.
Yes.
Obviously,
Yeah,
I would
not
not
lawyer
write
language. Right. That's why I don't remember it, because it was lawyer language. But as I read it, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do this. Okay, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that.
Exactly. So it's probably things like that. If you go outside of the estimate kinds of language, however you guys work with your estimates and costs and things like that, like there's usually like some kind of cap on that.
Right.
Things like that. So yeah.
No, and it's what's that?
That's probably a lot of what you saw.
Yes.
Limitations of liability and indemnification clauses.
Right. Yeah, it was very, very official. And it was
actually a big and important one, though, because that is the one where if you, as the third party vendor, does something that causes the designer to get sued and it isn't the designer's fault, that's the clause that's going to protect you.
Yes.
As the designer.
Yes, and you're right. That was there. It's absolutely true. Because look, and to your other point, anybody that she presented that to that said, I'm not signing it, come on, right? Yeah. It's just saying you agree to do business like a grown-up. Yeah. And when it's your fault, you'll handle it. And when it's my fault, I'll handle it, right?
Correct. Yeah, and that's the other thing about the indemnification. It should be mutual. Like it doesn't just protect the designer. It should protect the vendor as well.
Right.
Because if the designer does something, and like they should protect the vendor from any kind of potential lawsuits or anything that may happen.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It was so funny because it's only in the last month that happened, and I thought, yeah, you're so smart. It's why I love you.
That's what you should be doing for sure. I mean, I know it's a lot of paperwork. I get it.
Yes, it definitely is. And so you also will help with. So now, one of the things that we know, Jamie, is first of all, we're talking about the client contract, right? We're there, and we need to have all the things that are in it. And then, of course, I literally just had a coaching call the other day where we're going down a problem that this happens to be a vendor, not the designer, right? So the vendor comes to me and has a coaching call and says, I'm working with a designer and this has gone awry and I'm not sure what to do about it. And I'm absolutely like sick to my stomach over what happened here. And how do you think I get this resolved? And so we have this whole conversation, and part of the conversation was, I said, well, how is the agreement set up in the beginning? What is the language and what is in your agreement with them? And see, when I say that, I'm not necessarily referring to the contract. I know that the contract is the basis of the agreement, but I am always, what are the points that you made in your contract that you made real to the person? So two things I want to say here. Number one is the original point I was making is the person on the phone said to me, oh my goodness, we've already called our lawyer and revised that part of our contract, right? And so that's something that we see all the time in the Facebook groups with the designers and stuff. They'll be like, this just happened, and now in order to avoid this in the future, I've rewritten this into my contract. I've contracted, right? And that's how you ultimately get to a good contract. It's like you have to go through you as many mistakes so that you know what the pitfalls are, right? Yeah, absolutely.
You can't anticipate everything. Stuff is going to come up that is going to knock you over. Even 15 years into business, you're like, I did not see that coming.
Right.
And that's okay. You just have to learn from it. I think that's where people sort of get paralyzed, is they don't learn from it. They're so upset about it and emotional about it, which is understandable. We're business owners. I get that. But you have to be able to step back and say, okay, what can I do to make sure that this never happens again?
Exactly.
Or how can I prevent this? Or what could I have done differently? There should be a lot of reflection when things like that happen.
And to your point, that's why to always consider your contracts a living, breathing document, that you want to consider revising them. And what I like is, to my original, comment at the top of the show was, if I were to go to my regular family lawyer who does our real estate and our wills and our powers of attorney and all of that stuff, he's not going to have, or she is not going to have had 10 interior design clients and have that basic detailed contract that is catered to our industry, and then is something that I start with that's fully formed and specific to us, even though over the years I might come back and ask to have certain things added and revised and changed. But, you know, we need people like yourself that see the things that we haven't seen yet, because to your point, something will knock you over 15 years from now. But in your experience with the clients that you work with, you've already seen who's been knocked over by what, right?
Exactly. And it goes the other way. Like, I wouldn't write a will. That would be terrible. Oh, people ask me to write wills. I'm like, no, I cannot do that. It's much better to be specialized and to sort of stay in that lane of specialty. But yes, I see the problems that come up. I get the phone calls. The reason why the third-party provider thing jumped out of so quickly to me is because I just had a designer call me with an issue with a third-party provider, and she's like, "We're changing the contract." So that's actually why it was the first thing that came to mind, was because it was a real issue that she had with a plumber.
Right.
She's like, "We can fix this. I can't." She's out a lot of money because the contract that she originally had didn't cover her.
Right. And so here's the other point that I wanted to make about the contract. And this was the point that I was talking about in the coaching call, is that, yes, the contract has to be tight. It has to be good. It has to address all the things that between your own experience and your lawyer's experience and your friend's experience that you know could possibly come up, so that they're in there. But and it's so funny because I did a Facebook Live in my Sales for Creatives course just yesterday, which unfortunately I talked for 40 minutes and hadn't hit the go live button.
No.
Loving life. When I went to turn it off, it went 3, 2, 1, you're live. I went, yay. I'm so technically challenged. It's ridiculous. It's amazing. I've put over 450 podcasts out, quite frankly. But the thing was, I literally had this discussion because, yes, have that contract, have it airtight, have all those things. But, you know, the contract is only really going to work for you if you get to the point that the process has unraveled, right? Yeah. In other words, what I want designers to understand is have it. You can't be in business without certain things: your business entity, your business contracts, your business insurances, your business ID number. You know, you got to be a big girl, big boy business. Like, you got to do it by the book, right? But my point is that and you tell me what you think about this, Jamie. When I say to a designer that I'm working with in the groups or whatever, if this is the second or third time that this has come up for you, in the second or third client, that this is where the speed bump comes up and there's a problem, and you're saying to me, but it's in my contract, then I'm saying to you, you're not expressing it enough beforehand. It's like that buried in the iTunes thing. Just because I signed your contract that's 16 pages long, don't pull it out to me when we're in the middle of having a problem saying, well, it was line 6, section 4, line 52A, B, Z, and that's where you signed on that. Because if you know that this is the place that typically a client will give you pushback or not want, not do what, is the agreement, then I say, before they even sign it, I would go right to, see right here, this line right here. I know we're going over everything pretty broad, but this line right here, I'm going to tell you what, if we're going to have a problem in 3 months, it's going to be over this, unless we talk about it now and we really make sure that we both understand what I mean here, what it means for you here, and this is the time to ask me questions about this. Like, what do you think about that?
1,000%. If I could do a higher percentage, a million%.
Yes, thank you.
It's all about communication.
Right.
Because the fact is, no one reads their contracts.
Right.
They just don't. Nobody wants to. Right. The only people who read contracts are lawyers. Sometimes other people who know a lot about contracts. Right. And so be practical. That's, I think, you're like the theme of all of the advice. Like, use
Yes.
common sense, be practical. If you know that this is an issue, let the client know, yes, this is in the contract, but I just want to highlight it. I
Right.
know some people who will actually physically highlight their contract.
Right.
This is important. I want you to pay special attention to this part.
Right.
And if that's a way to facilitate that conversation that is a little bit easier, because sometimes they're hard conversations to have, right? You're balancing, you're a client services professional, right? We're balancing the act of servicing our clients and protecting ourselves and running a business and making sure we're getting clients and making money and all of those things. So I don't ever minimize or want to stand on that very formal ceremony of just being like, throw them the contract. It's their responsibility to read it. Sometimes you walk them through it, and that's an easy way to make those speed bumps go away.
I mean, because it goes to our original point. It's when everybody's happy, there's no emotion attached to that. So if in my mind, it's like, if I know that this is a spot over and over that I have had difficulty, whether it's difficulty uncomfortable or difficulty full blown, we've devolved into a chaos, then I'm not going to get into another agreement, another relationship with another client without saying to them first, this part right here. Let's talk about this part right here, because some people get it, some people don't. We need to figure this out, where you fall on this.
And it's okay to even go back to the clients who've already signed. And you can do it in a way that's not aggressive, just saying, hey, this came up in another instance, and I just wanted to revisit this with you just to make sure that we're all on the same page. I know you signed the agreement and we're working and everything's going great, but I just want to clarify one thing.
Yeah, I just had a big aha lesson with my other client, and now I'm calling all the rest of you.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong, but there's nothing wrong with that.
You know what it is to me? I'm being a grown-up business person.
Yes, that is 100% right.
Right. I like the 1,000,000% better, Jamie.
1,000,000% right. No, it is. It's common. It's just having those conversations. And people, I think a lot of times in business feel uncomfortable having those conversations, because going back to one of our other points is money gets people uncomfortable.
Exactly.
And it's also just part of business.
Oh my goodness. It's crazy. It is crazy. It's complicated. And, it is a lot of liability for an interior designer. And of course, do you counsel interior designers? I don't even know if this is part of your responsibility or your purview as a lawyer on having the business insurances and the levels that they have.
Yeah. So sometimes, really, to be honest with you, and this is one thing that I also like to be very transparent about, if you have a really good broker, they should be able to get it done for you. I do review insurance policies for clients sometimes. It was one of those things that I had never done before. And then a few years ago, a client said, hey, would you do this? And I'm like, well, yeah. Are you sure? And they said, yeah, go for it. And now I do it a lot in the media world, because those can be very complicated. And on occasion, a client will ask me to do it, and I can, because I have a few years of experience doing it now. But I do counsel my clients before they have me do it. If you have a really good broker and a broker who understands your business, you may not need me to do it, because they should know how to protect you properly.
Right, exactly. I mean, we did not have our lawyer do it. We had our broker do it and all of that.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering, if someone comes to you, if a designer is listening and they're like, I'm a brand new designer and I'm only in business in X amount of weeks, months, or years, and I haven't done a lot of these things. Is it something that you do, Jamie, as part of your little checklist when you help a designer open up their business and declare their entity and just say, okay, we're going to need this kind of a contract for clients. We're going to need this kind of contract with vendors. We're going to need these kinds of insurances taken care of. Even though you might not be the one executing, do you go through the checklist with them of all the things that they should have to protect themselves as a business owner?
Yeah. When a client sits down and wants that, I will give that. Sometimes clients get overwhelmed by that. And so I try to read the room a little bit and take a few steps back to make sure, because, it's a lot, and you start listing a lot, and people start to, I can hear it over the phone, the silence, and then I'm like, take a breath. It's okay. We're going to get through it all. But yes, we will go through a full sort of audit of what do you need to do? Where do you need to go? What do you need to think about? And sometimes we do it in stages, but insurance is definitely something to get first.
Right. Okay. All right. And I have to say, I think if I were brand new in business, I would, as just like, well, I'm always willing to face the music. That's the point. As much as it might be overwhelming, I would want that checklist from you. I would want somebody like you with your knowledge and your expertise. And even if I said to you, I can only bite off these 3 things today, but I would want the checklist because I love to rely on the expert for what they do, right? And I might debate you at every corner on what it is that you're doing and you think I should be doing, but I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to at least say, this is what this person does for a living, and I need to hear them. And so a lot of times we don't know where to get that whole checklist that we need from a legal standpoint of what we have to do to start our business,
Yeah, and I'm okay. I like having those conversations because every business is different. And I like to be challenged because the fact is I'm not doing your business. So I learn from my clients all the time. And every bit as much as I am an expert in certain things, I'm learning every single day. New things do pop up. Things do surprise me. I would be lying if I said otherwise. And so being open to those conversations and having the give and take, I love when a client challenges me. It's a good thing. There needs to be that kind of conversation. It helps me grow. It helps them grow. I can explain where I'm coming from and why. And it helps me better understand my client's business so that I never want to create something that is not practical. So it has to protect you, but it also has to work. It can't scare off a client because even though we do have the philosophy, if a client doesn't want to sign a contract, that is a good red flag. The other side of that coin is there are contracts that do scare off clients, and we don't want to create those either. Right. So there's a balance. You have to have a balance.
Right. I agree. And I have to say, if a contract, this doesn't have to be true, but the first thing that went through my mind when you said sometimes there are contracts that scare off a client, the first thing that went through my mind is I would think that would happen more likely when I don't own my contract. Like if I present it and if I'm a little bit like, yeah, this is sort of crazy, isn't it? It's 16 pages, but if I'm like, here's my contract, this is the way I do business, blah, 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 blah. If I were to notice any hesitancy or fear on the part of the potential client based on solely the complication or the size of the contract, it seems to me I would dive right into that and I'd say, look, I understand this, maybe you're not accustomed to work with a designer before, but 90% of what's here is for your benefit. Let's go through it and understand and see how it's a protection for both of us. And that's so important for you when we're going to get involved here.
Absolutely. And the other reason I see that clients get scared off is for one that doesn't flow very well, one that the designer tries to put together themselves by cobbling together pieces of other people's contracts. I see that a lot.
So it doesn't feel professional, doesn't present professional, and therefore it just puts that whole doubt in your mind of like, is this like a, what do they call it? I don't know, ad hoc, like, okay, this is ad hoc. Is everything else here ad hoc, right? Like what else is crazy pants, right?
Yes. Exactly.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Well, Jamie, I have to tell you, I know I could talk to you for another hour. I mean, we didn't even get involved in, buying somebody else's business that I wanted to get involved with, because that is an opportunity that many designers face. I might have to have you back on the show in a couple of months and hit some of these other topics if you're up for it.
I'd love to.
Yeah. Be awesome. Okay. So, guys, listen, we're going to find Jamie at, is it #legal.com? Jamie, give us all how we get in touch with you.
So it's #legal.com. It's the same for Instagram, and you can email me directly, Jamie's JAMIE at #legal.com.
All right. I have to say, I said it to you at the top of the show, everybody. I have worked with Jamie and her firm before. I 100% endorse what she does, the way she does it, you can hear it. She's not lawyery, right? Like she's a real person and she understands our business model and what we go through. So don't hesitate to reach out. Definitely follow her on Instagram. It's so much fun. And I just want to say, don't forget that we have our sponsors, Kravit Inc. and My Doma Studio, to make sure that you reach out to them. And if you are interested in learning all about what My Doma Studio has to offer, you are going to head over to mydomastudio.com/a-well-designed-business and make sure that you remember that right in your My Doma Studio, you're finding the curated Kravit products right there for you to specify and source for your interior design projects. You move them right over into that project, and then the client can hit click, cart, buy. It's very easy. It makes life wonderful. And don't forget that My Doma has recently added QuickBooks to the platform, making it a full service platform for you. And the last thing I want to say before I go is, I did a lot of talking about my friend Sandra Funk in this episode. And if you are going to High Point Market 2019, October 2019, I'm going to have the most outstanding panel discussion with Sandra Funk, Lori Paranjape, Mrs. Paranjape, and Taylor Spellman. Okay? I mean, I know you just went, you're kidding me, right? I know. This is going to be killer. And this panel discussion is going to be called Confidence Sells, because each of these three ladies have completely different business models, but they are all killing it in their own way, doing it their way. And what I know from knowing them well is that the root of it is the confidence they have, not only in themselves as women and as business owners, but they have confidence in their process. And that's the translation to really starting to feel your sea legs under you and really starting to build and grow a meaningful business. So I wish you will join me in High Point. This is too early in the summer for me to tell you date and time and location. But when you start to plan your High Point Market trip, please make sure you look for this. You will find it on my website, luannniagara.com, and you look under the events page and you'll find it. But this is going to be an outstanding discussion with these three women, and I'm looking forward to it. And of course, you know me, I always leave plenty of time for Q&A. And so come out and be inspired and get some amazing ideas from these powerhouse women and bring your questions. So, all right, my peeps, I love you like life. Thank you so much for showing up. Jamie, thank you again for being with us. You are a rock star. I love what you do. And I just want to say to everybody, I have to always say, what are you going to do? What action are you going to take? Don't leave it in your notebook. Do something. So if today you need to call your lawyer to revise your contract, today you need to contact Jamie and get a contract maybe, or today you're just going to take one step in thinking more carefully about the things that you know in your contract have needed to be addressed, and maybe you haven't made the time to do it. Okay, so what do you got to do? You got to decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at luannniagara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.